Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's so good to see you.
It's you have no idea what a joy you are to work with. So I want to start this by saying that I have been so looking forward to talking with you because you are incredibly talented. We're going to talk about all of your wonderful talents, but you have some special talents, which we're going to get into as we chat. And one of those special talents is that I think you make people feel so valued
Mm.
when they work with you. And I'm so excited for you to help maybe share some of those insights about how to do that because it's a gift. It is a gift. So thank you for being here today and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you so much. What a compliment off the bat. I hope I can live up to it.
Oh, please, you do, you do. All right. Well, Amanda, you are the SVP of Fair Play, the Fair Play franchise for Hello Sunshine. Can you talk a little bit about your current role and what Fair Play is and who is it for?
So I work at Hello Sunshine, which is a beautiful company that was founded by Reese Witherspoon. Half of our company makes amazing film and television shows that hopefully you all know and love. From Scratch is out on Netflix right now, just making everyone cry and feel all the feels. So half of our company is doing that sort of mission-driven media work that we do. And then half of our company is building direct-to-consumer channels and brands and audiences. And so I sit in that side of the company running the Fair Play business. We met Eve Rodsky about 5 years ago. And, our company mission at Hello Sunshine is to change the narrative for women. And when we learned about what Eve Rodsky was researching and writing about, we knew we just needed to lock arms with her. So Fair Play is in partnership with the best-selling author Eve Rodsky. She's written books Fair Play and Find Your Unicorn Space. And at its core, these are brands all about women's time, how we expect women to use their time, and the time fairness and time choice that women do and do not have. So specifically on the Fair Play side, she really figured out how to balance the workload at home. Because we know the research shows overwhelmingly that women take on the majority of the workload at home, regardless if we work outside the home. And while we've talked about this issue for hundreds of years and studied it and done countless research interpretations on this, no one had really offered a solution until Eve came along. And she developed this system to divvy up the workload that we're seeing people from all over the world benefiting from. We're getting letters from South Korea and Brazil, and of course, all over the United States around how this is changing the game for women and couples and families. So it's been such a delight to work on. And now we're building out a second part of her business, which is all around unicorn space. Back to that time message of time choice. When you look at media and you think about our own lives, women really are not expected to do anything other than be of service to three roles: as parents, as partners, or as professionals. Mm-hmm. And we think that's such a miss when it comes to talking about power, creativity, and opportunity. And so Unicorn Space is Eve's journey into understanding and unpacking why do those expectations exist? How do we confidently step out of those? And how do we nurture this thing she calls unicorn space, this thing that doesn't exist unless you create it for yourself, this time to pursue creative pursuits that make you uniquely you. What she found in all the research is that has huge, huge mental health benefits, physical health benefits, relational benefits, identity benefits. Everyone wins when we as women are able to tap into those creative pursuits that make us uniquely us. So it's been an honor to be able to represent and build those brands. We've built social channels together with She Speaks. We have built a train the trainer model that teaches people how to utilize these skills when they're working with clients and patients. And of course, we're a media company, so we storytell the heck out of these things to inspire people to be the best versions of themselves, specifically when it comes to how they use their time.
Well, first, the mission, which is of the company for Hello Sunshine, which is to change the narrative for women. I mean, what a gift that is for all of us, all of the women out there who are going to benefit and have already benefited from it. Part of what you've done for Fair Play this year is you released a documentary.
Mhm.
Can you talk? And I've seen the documentary now at least twice all the way through,
Mhm.
and cried, laughed, like it was so engaged both times, which is kind of unusual because usually, you've seen something and you've kind of, all right,
Mhm.
I've seen it. But
Mhm.
it just is such an incredibly powerful documentary. Can you
Mhm.
talk about what it was like to be involved with the documentary and
Mhm.
what the response has been to it?
Mhm. Well, thank you. I know you were at the premiere and it felt like family having you there. I think it's important to understand the why we made a documentary. So
Mhm.
before that point, Eve's work existed in a book, and a book predominantly geared towards women to really wake us up. And so, I used to work at Participant Media, which is one of the OG media companies, mission-based media companies, with an incredible filmmaker and leader in the doc space, a woman named Diane Wireman, who unfortunately has passed away recently, but her legacy lives on in the doc space. And I watched what she was able to do with documentaries to really wake people up and
Mhm.
unpack those things that are holding us back. And so using those learnings and understanding our mission with Fair Play, it made natural sense for us to tackle it through a documentary. And
Mhm.
our goal was really to create an asset that families could watch together, that couples could watch together, that men would want to watch. And so what we did was we ventured out. We brought on some partners, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, who is an amazing, amazing filmmaker of the Misrepresentation Project and The Mask You Live In, The Great American
Mhm.
Lie. She's an incredible filmmaker who unpacks these big meaty issues that show up in media and then also show up in how we behave as a society. So we
Mhm.
knew she was just the right filmmaker to tackle this. And then we
Mhm.
called up our friends at P&G who have a studios division, P&G Studios, who are all about making great content that changes the game. So we together joined forces and went out to make this movie. And a dear colleague of mine, Aaron Stover, got to, bring Eve's research and partners to life through a ton. I think we interviewed maybe 150 different couples around the country. So she did that amazing work. But the goal really worked out. When we launched the film on iTunes, it was in the top 10 of best new documentaries to watch. It's
Wow.
now on Hulu, so please go check it out on Hulu. Um, what we got from our audience was I watched this with my partner and he kept pausing it and looking at me and saying, "Is this how you feel about how our home is running?" And partners
Mhm.
were just, nodding. But the beauty of the documentary was that it was a third party giving information that two people are on the same side looking at. So you're
Mhm.
inherently on the same team looking at the problem. So you're going to solve it together versus one partner saying, "Hey, I don't feel like our relationship is fair and we need to make some changes around who's doing the laundry and the dishes and the carpool." That
Mhm.
movie allowed for us to do that hard work for them so that they could have media or more solutions-based conversations. And it's been incredibly powerful. And we're now taking the film to Sundance in January and couldn't be more excited about
Ah,
that.
that's
So we
awesome.
just want to breathe so much life into it because Jennifer's beautiful work and my teammates on the unscripted side, Sarah Ray, they just really made a beautiful and compelling piece. And I think to your motion too, like we laughed and cried. And I think when something resonates so much with how you feel in your own life, it's impossible not to not feel it with us while watching that movie.
I love that. Well, okay, so let's take a step back and talk about how you got started at Hello Sunshine. When did
Mhm.
that start for you and how did you come in?
Yeah, so I've been here for almost 4 years, which is funny because the company's only been around for 5. So I feel like an OG at this point. It was interesting. My colleague, Erin Stover, who works on my team, was my intern 15 years ago. And she was here and she called me one day and said, "Okay, I need a new boss. I think it's time for you to come be my boss." And I was like, "Well, you should decide if you want to be the boss. And if you want to be the boss, I will stand back and like support you from the sidelines. But if you don't feel confident about doing that, let's do it." So I came in and really my first priority was how do we bring the Fair Play franchise to life, and use partnerships to really boost it and give it what it deserves. But Before that, I've been at Sony and Paramount, always in the partnerships role. I was at Participant Media, where I headed up all of our film social impact campaigns. So really making the movies matter and making things move forward, the issues that we are highlighting. And then before that, working at an agency representing some of the best brands in the world, figuring out how film and entertainment can move product, services, and their businesses forward. So I think, it's easy to say now, 20 years in, looking back, my entire career has been focused on 3 prongs. It's like business development and corporate partnerships as one, media and entertainment as the other, and then impact as that third leg of the stool. And how do those 3 things work together to make the biggest impact that we can?
So we've always been in the industry, the entertainment industry. Why the entertainment industry? What is intriguing about it to you?
I think, when I started, it was just about, I was in college and I worked in our production lab at 12th Man. I was at Texas A&M and I worked in 12th Man Productions and had just amazing access to camera equipment, editing equipment, amazing teammates, producers. I was able to produce a weekly show while I was a senior in college. I shot and produced content that would show on our Jumbotron to 100,000 people. I just loved making things. And so I went into entertainment because I loved the idea of making stories, but I knew I wanted to be on the business side because I didn't want to be working those crazy production hours. That's really how I chose it. I was like, I didn't want to be on the field, doing 24-hour days or whatever that is. I wanted to be on the business side in the decision maker seat. But I think it just all comes down to the love of making things and storytelling, and entertainment being such a powerful vehicle for that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about working for a company then like Hello Sunshine, just before we move on. Obviously such a female-based mission, right? You mentioned earlier to change the narrative for women. What's it like being at a place like Hello Sunshine?
It's funny, I forget how it works anywhere else at this point, because 4 years in Hello Sunshine time, I think, is like 20 years in other company time. We have a real working environment. We look around every day and I'm so impressed by my colleagues, my peers, and everyone who works at Hello Sunshine comes for the mission, and we stay for each other. The talent that exists here, the collaboration, the warmth, the generosity that exists here is undeniable. And our mission is real, and it's important to all of us. And so there's just a deeper reasoning for all of us being there that really unites us. It helps us weather the hard storms together because we know we're there for a reason. And it's a really unique culture.
Well, in thinking about then this mission that you are on with this team of amazing women and men too. I know there are men that are at
Loads of amazing men at our company who are so phenomenal. Yeah.
So you're all on this collective mission, and I'm curious to hear from your perspective, from that bird's eye view. How do you think things have changed for women over the last 5 years or so in the industry, in the entertainment industry, and how do you see it evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
It's really interesting to see. So our president of our studio's businesses is Lauren Levy-Newstatter, and she's our first executive hire here. When she started, she was making amazing shows like Little Fires Everywhere and The Morning Show on Apple and Truth Be Told. And just this week, they premiered Something from Tiffany's, which is coming out very soon on Amazon. Such a fun rom-com. But when you look at the premiere pictures, it's so many women. Women are producers, they're grips, they're showrunners, they're in makeup, they're writers. It's an incredible impact to just even look at a premiere picture or who's in the writer's room. And that's on one side of our business. And then I think on how business gets done is really interesting. And a dear friend of mine, Claire Shipman, she's a best-selling author of The Confidence Code. She's coming out with a new book next June, and it's called The Power Code, really looking at how we interpret power through a gender lens. And I just wanted to read an excerpt from her book that I think really speaks to how it's changing the game for women. It's, power doesn't have to intimidate or look intimidating. It can be about encouragement and sharing credit, or getting the whole enterprise moving better. It can be less ego and more joy. Joy, by the way, was a much debated word for our subtitle, a concept that's not usually associated with power. That's the point. Why shouldn't it feel joyful? We don't mean a Zen yoga infused sunset kind of view of joy, but the joy we all feel when we're getting worthwhile things done, that's joyful power. I feel like that's the shift. It's not only who's making the things, but how we're making the things. That's the exciting shift for me of, joy is why I wake up. My mom died when I was young, and I knew that life was short, and we spend so much time working that, like, why not make this joyful? These are our friends, they're our colleagues. Why not make everyone better in the process? And I think that really shows up in the work. And I think that's the power dynamic that's really shifting, hopefully not just in entertainment, but in corporations at large.
I love that you brought that up, and thank you for reading that quote, because it stimulated so many ideas and thoughts. But one that I just wanted to underline and see if I could get your thoughts on is this notion of purpose that women, like I asked you, where do you see things going for women? And what I hear you saying is it's we're changing our role beyond maybe what it used to be traditionally for women, like we are, parents, partners, professionals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to really also having passion and purpose in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what we do and being allowed to
Mm-hmm.
have that.
Mm-hmm.
Being given that opportunity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you can share your thoughts on that changing role of women. Do you see that we are moving, that's maybe slowly, but we're moving in a direction
Mm-hmm.
where women are going to be allowed to have play these other roles and to have purpose beyond
Mm-hmm.
maybe more traditional roles we talked about?
100%. So I think about everything comes down to time. How do we use it? We all have 24 hours in a day. As a mom of young boys, twin boys who are 7, I feel like I'm out of the weeds of like that early part of motherhood, but limited time, right? So as I think about how I use my time for my career, purpose was so important. If I'm going to spend that many hours in a week doing something, I want it to matter. I want it to feel good for my soul. And not only that, I want it to feel good for how I get to do it. So I think the first part of that is like, how do you bring some of that into your work? And how do you think about it more as a values alignment than a passion? Passion is just an overused word. Eve talks about that a lot in her work in Unicorn Space. Passion is this like scary thing that you need to figure out, but what do you value? And how can you get that in your work? And how is that how you define your purpose? So the company doesn't necessarily need to be solving world issues. I hope they are. But even if they're not, even if you work in the farthest thing from that, how does your job create an opportunity for you to express your values? I think that's first and foremost. And then beyond that, how do we give ourselves that permission outside of the walls of work to pursue those other interesting things? There's loads of research that Eve uncovers in Unicorn Space about how that affects our mental and physical health. And I think the pandemic really, unearthed a lot of things for us. But this idea that, with the great resignation and people not re-upping their contracts or leaving, like we're just reassessing what life is all about. And I think just putting that back into perspective, that a little bit more, we don't live to work, but we work to live, finding some interesting balance between those things, knowing obviously there are constraints with resources and not everyone has a privileged position to do that, but just really finding that little thing on the outside that you can do 20 minutes a day that just lights you up.
Well, and that it's such a powerful, and I encourage everyone who may be seeing this, that it is such a powerful, the Unicorn Space book that Eve wrote is incredibly useful. It is a great way to start to kind of take a step back and say to yourself, what is it that I value, so that I can find the time to do that and feed your soul, right? Feed
Mhm.
yourself what you need to live the kind of life that you want to live. I
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit about, go back to your college days. You
Mhm.
played soccer competitively for
Mhm.
years, including
Mhm.
in college, where
Mhm.
you were captain of the team, a Division I team, I might
Mhm.
add. So as a mom of a soccer player, female soccer player,
Mhm.
not yet in the college realm, I know Division I soccer is incredibly competitive. Can you
Mhm.
talk though about how that level of playing at that level, prepared you for your career, and
Mhm.
also just the value of playing a team sport?
Mhm. I remember when I was graduating from I was in my senior year of college, and I was so privileged to be recruited to a number of different places. I want to just call out the fact that I had such a privileged position to have parents who invested in me and had the resources to invest in me so that I could play soccer. I lived in an environment and neighborhood where it was very easy to find competitive teams to play on, and and I had all of that at my fingertips. It's not to devalue the fact that I worked my ass off, but without those other two critical pieces, a lot of this wouldn't be possible. So I recognize that privilege. And when I was getting recruited, it was it was my first foray into an interview process where they were recruiting me and like trying to get me on their teams, but I was really evaluating what were these teams like? Who's on them? What's the coach like? What does the coach care about? What are the players like to each other? Do they win? If so, why do they win? Um, and it gave me a real understanding of team dynamics. And so I chose Texas A&M for a number of reasons. The coach really valued the way he recruited was not to get the number one rock star out of the world, like shooting star of a player. He got that next rung down, really good players. And so when we came together, there was no just like one person who's the star of the show and the rest of us were just supporting that one person. It was a real act in teamsmanship. So we were able to win championships because we knew we had to work together. And so that's where I learned that. Another school that we played against often had the other recruiting technique where just get the shiny stars, but they could never win because all the shining stars were competing with each other to be the shining star, and they would just fall apart. And so as I think about how I build teams, that's really important to me. And then I think the second thing I learned that I'm really trying to instill in not only my teams that I work with at work, but in my boys as they grow up is good players are really good on their own. Great players make everyone around them better. How do you be a great player? And so as I think about entering into the workforce every day, how do I get the best out of my team, and how do they feel supported, and how do I remind them of those things? Because when they're playing at their best, when they're doing their best, we're all going to win. And so I think that key differentiator between good and great is what's driven me and how I lead and how I work and how I build and be a part of teams.
You read my mind, because as I mentioned when we started, I have observed about you in our time, the time that we've had the chance to work together, that you really do have this unique talent for making people feel valued. And I think that you therefore get the best out of people when you
Mm-hmm.
make them feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
What is the philosophy, or what is the magic behind making that happen? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think so many people can struggle with that. Can you,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that maybe it emanates from your days playing team sports, because to win together you have to be together, as you said, like
Mm-hmm.
play as a
Mm-hmm.
team
Mm-hmm.
to help one another.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone is looking to get better at this and they're
Mm-hmm.
not as naturally talented at this as you
Mm-hmm.
are, what is your advice to them?
I think it's kind of simple. What would you want to hear? What would you want someone to tell you? What would you want someone to notice about you? What motivates you? And start like looking for that in other people. And just, it's amazing what one conversation can do for someone. I was talking to a colleague yesterday who is an unbelievable VP. And she just opened up to me about the imposter syndrome she feels. And I was like, well, don't we all feel that? That feels really universal. And here's what I see in you and your leadership style. And here's how I can support you. And I'm in your corner, and you can always come in my office and tell me exactly how you feel. It's a safe space. So I think it's just about creating safe spaces, really articulating to others what you, the golden rule, as cheesy as it is, like saying to others what you would want said upon you. And I know that I'm at my worst when I'm doing all the talking in a meeting. I haven't created a space where other people feel safe to share. And so even just monitoring that is like such a tactical, very little thing. Like, how am I getting more voices in the room to feel comfortable sharing? And I fail at that every day. And I win at that sometimes. And I don't get it right every time, but just going a little easy on it. I will say one thing, though, is that a lot of times this gets misunderstood. I've had executives look at me before thinking that I'm too kind, I'm too nice, I'm too soft. And I think the real miss is when I am this way, I get the best out of everyone around me. It yields greater results, but sometimes it can be misconstrued as like this unexperienced optimism, when actually it's hard work that I do every day to maintain that optimism. It's not a lack of understanding. It's a true knowing and a lot of work to stay in that lane, to stay positive, and to stay an amazing teammate to people.
I mean, it is hard work to make something look easy. And I think that that is probably the most difficult thing for somebody like you who is so talented at this. And I have seen you do this with people on your team, with people externally, partners. Like, you have a gift, but you make it look easy, which is probably why people think, oh, it's an easy thing. Can you, what I just want to press one more thing on this topic. Can you talk a little bit about self-awareness? Because you seem to have a very good understanding, and it may not be always to perfect to from your perspective, but you do seem to have an understanding of yourself and how you're coming across and what's going on with you. And this is an area that we hear from women that they struggle with. Do you have any advice for women or people who are watching this who might want to be more self-aware? Because it is an important piece of the puzzle.
100%. You know, I think it's what our friends are for. It's what our colleagues are for. The amount of conversations, like even the one yesterday where I got to remind someone of how they show up in a room, they don't get to see that. But how can we hold up the mirror for our colleagues? Sometimes, you know, I'm an extrovert, so that's my natural tendency to go to the network. I've done that my whole career. How after a meeting, I remember being at Sony, one of my dear colleagues who now works at Nike. I would come out of meetings and I'd say, how did I perform? What could I have done better? Where did I shine? And just seeking feedback, I think, is really helpful. You can't totally rely on other people. You have to know what it is inside of you. But I think another thing is just like writing those things down, keeping it in your notes, like, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm not so good at, and then just trying to keep operationalizing your career into the things you're good at and finding teammates and ways to support and scaffold your weaknesses. But it's a process.
Yeah, absolutely. And such great advice. All right, my last question, because I know I've kept you long enough. What do you wish you could tell the young Amanda that was just starting out in her career?
So many things. I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but this idea that, like, I'm sitting here now looking back, it's easier to do now. What I wish I would have always known, and I wish what everyone knows, is that as you're moving forward, it doesn't always make sense, but just go where it feels good and go where the joy is and where the learning is and where the positive is, or whatever your particular values are. Go towards that, even if it doesn't immediately bring you the money. That'll come later, but just like keep going towards the goodness and it will work out. And if I would have said, this is what I want to be in 15, 20, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I didn't even know this job existed. And so I think we do ourselves a disservice when we try to make that 5-year plan, it puts a cap on what's possible. And so I just think, like, I'm surrounded by amazing strategic thinkers, but I think sometimes it's not about strategy, it's about intuition, and just following that intuition into the goodness will lead you wherever you want to go.
Amanda, I am so excited that we had this chance to talk, and I can't wait for people to hear this. Thank you so much for spending this time. I mean, there is so much in here that people can learn from, and your generous spirit just shines through. So thank you for being with us today, and your
Thank you so
generosity.
much. I learned a ton from you. So thank you so
Aw,
much, Eliza.
my pleasure. Great to have you on.
All right. Thanks.